Hi everybody, this is Dr. Stephanie Azri and I'm here today to talk to you about communication in couples. And this podcast is extracted out of chapter 2 from The Real Guide to Life as a Couple, which is my new book, and definitely something to consider if you're in a relationship or you're just after some happy, fun, truth and dare to get to know your partner a bit better. So communication's often the biggest issue in the couples that I work with. And interestingly enough, it's often for this very silly, small issues that couples come and see me for support. And so communication in relationships is probably the most vital skill to understand and to master. And if you're going to work on just one skill for the rest of your life with your partner, it probably should be communication. Because without good communication, it's very easy to misunderstand your partner or for things to unravel unnecessarily. And the reality is we all do it. Whether it's me, you, or anyone else listening here, we've all used poor communication or misunderstood what our partners or other people wanted to tell us. So for example, to illustrate this, just imagine for a second that you receive a text from your partner and it says, "Don't touch the laundry." Now, clearly by text we have limited tone and limited details as to what message is trying to be conveyed here. But how would you interpret it? So option 1, perfect. I've got a chore-free night and what movie am I going to watch tonight? Or it might be like, bloody hell, something else I can't do right clearly. Right? So that simple text of "don't touch the laundry" could be, yeah, awesome, I get a free night, or someone's whinging about what I've done. So that's a good example to see that we interpret messages in the way we feel they're addressed or sent to us, but it doesn't mean we're right. So communication is a mix of sending messages and receiving them, but they're always open to interpretation. And so that's impacted on by the way we feel, by the circumstances around us at the time, or even history in that relationship. But things like, having a bad day at work or just recovering from a fight can impact greatly on how we read that single text. So if you're in a bad mood or you've been yelled at by a customer or you've just had a fight, the odds are you're more likely to interpret that text as something negative. But if you've had a great day and work was awesome and your partner's just baked you a cake, the odds are you'll take it as awesome, I'm being rewarded. So either way, communication skills is important, and to understand our own mood and perception is also important. What's interesting here and important for couples to realise is that communication skills involve words, tone, body language, but also a willingness to assume the best rather than assume the worst. And a lot of the couples that I see, particularly those who've been together for a while and stressed with young children or financial issues and whatnot, may have gone down the road of assuming the worst. And that's something to remember. So let's break down communication into content, tone, and body language. So content's pretty self-explanatory. That's the stuff we actually say. The words chosen to express our thoughts. So for example, if I say, "What do you want?" as opposed to "What can I do for you?" Even though it probably means the exact same thing, the words we choose can have a big impact on how we communicate. And so also you'll notice that we don't talk to the same people the same way depending on whether someone's watching, or we certainly don't talk to different people the same way. For example, how do you talk to your boss as opposed to your sibling, right? Or your parents as opposed to your friends? Swearing is a good example because a lot of people won't swear in front of their bosses or parents, for example, but they may well in front of their friends or siblings. So ask yourself, when you consider your partner and your relationship, how have your words changed over the course of that relationship? Do you find that at the beginning you were maybe very warm and would choose kind and patient words, And as time went on, that your words changed? I don't know, I'm asking. Perhaps something to consider. Because like I said earlier, communication skills are often what starts going a little bit sour in couples. Because we take things for granted, all of us. And therefore, if we can just redress that very quickly in the piece, we can save ourselves a hell of a lot of trouble. So make sure that you continue being assertive with your partner as much as you're with everybody else, and still trying to be respectful and patient and kind. Now, let's move on to verbal tone. So we've talked about verbal content, and that's quite easy to grasp. What words are we picking? Think of your verbal tone. Think of the adjectives that could be attached to the words you're using. So for example, your tone, is it aggressive? Is it passive? Is it happy? Is it sad? Is it passionate? Is it interested? Or is it dull and cold? So for example, a great test is to talk to a baby or talk to someone who doesn't speak your language. So for example, if you said, I love you, to a baby with an aggressive tone, or to someone who does not understand the English words, I love you, so you said these words extremely aggressively, what do you think would happen? Now, the odds are the baby would start crying or frowning, and the person who does not speak your language would probably look at you a bit funny, right? Because the words, I love you, unless they're associated with a passionate tone or a kind tone, are unlikely to actually make you feel any good. The opposite applies. If you say I love you with a warm tone and slow-paced speech, how do you think your partner might feel about it? So I can tell you right now, big difference. So your verbal tone is what dictates the speed and the warmth as to how your partner may translate your words. So the content's important, but your tone's equally as important. If you speak with a negative tone, the odds are no matter what you have to say, it won't be taken well. If you speak appropriate content with a warm and caring tone, the odds are it will be taken really well. So we've done this in studies lots of time. That's a fact. So your content's important, your tone's almost more important. So get a hold of those two. Now, finally, consider your body language. So, do you find yourself staring at your partner when you're speaking? Are you making lots of hand movements or invading their personal space? Now, that's a big one. I'm quite familiar with people in my close circle who tend to speak with their hands a lot and come right to your face when they want to explain something to you. Now, I'm pretty sure they don't mean anything by it, and I'm pretty sure they don't realise how aggressive it comes across. But if you're trying to explain something to your partner and you're right in their face, your noses are bordering on touching, I'm going to guess they're going to feel a little bit intimidated or overwhelmed. So be mindful of your body language. Do you smile to your partner when you talk? Do you gently hold their hand when you address them? Or do you simply look at them when they're asking a question? Right? So your body language will make a big difference. So it's not about necessarily changing your style, but it's about being aware of it. If you come across as loud and entertaining, that's one thing. But if you come across as loud and aggressive, then you may draw your partner to be more reserved and quieter. So be careful of how your body language will influence the people listening to you. And that's important. So your body language is just as important as your tone and the words you speak. And in the book, there's lots of cute examples from couples around the world. And thank you for that, people, for sharing. That might give you practical examples as to how this makes a difference. Now, in terms of techniques and strategies to communicate in a way that's constructive and efficient, remember a simple I message. So consider, for example, if I say to my partner, you make me feel stupid when we talk about the car, as opposed to, I just feel a little bit silly when we talk about the car. Or, for example, you always blame me when things go wrong, as opposed to, I feel like I've done something wrong, right? The I message take away the blame. And when we say you, it implies that they've done something wrong. And therefore, people are more likely to arc up and react and be defensive when they feel like they're being accused. So remember that iMessage will always make your partner feel like you're open-minded to the conversation, and certainly trying to get your message across in a way that's not aggressive or blaming. So that iMessage is very important. It will dramatically change people's reaction to what you're trying to say. Similarly, having a reason, and in the book there's a whole model that I've laid out, but I might not do it here because of time constraint. But if we say, I would like to borrow the car to go to work early, would that be all right? It's always going to be more and better received than, I'm just taking the car, dude, because I need it, right? I can hear some chuckling in my mind, imagining you listening to this, but that's the truth. So iMessages with some feedback, some manners, and some reasons will always get you further than you blaming or making statements without asking if that's okay. So communication between partners is about 90% of couple therapy work. Now, that's big, that's huge. And the reality is, if people practice simple communication skills or exercises or games all the time, then they wouldn't need to come and see me or other therapists. And they definitely wouldn't get to the point where they feel attacked on a regular basis, right? So it's important to remember that communication skills, even though it sounds very silly, it's actually vital and one of the foundation skills to good, healthy relationships. So communication is about being polite, non-blaming. It's about being respectful and positive in a way that creates successful relationships. So they're just tools. Use those tools as you can. So some nice little tips. Consider your timing. If you're trying to talk to your partner, but they're cooking dinner, or they're changing the baby, or they're on a business phone call, the odds are they're not going to listen to you. So consider your timing. Is your timing right to have the type of conversation you're trying to have? Now, the second thing is around enough time. So sometimes we may decide to be needing to engage in a particular conversation, and we've only got 10 minutes, and after that the in-laws are turning up. Do not start an important conversation if you're waiting for your mother-in-law to turn up, because the odds are she'll turn up in the middle of it, and neither of you will feel like you've completed this conversation appropriately. So consider how much time you've got before you start important conversations. Again, location. Now, have you considered the impact of where you're having these conversations? So if you're trying to communicate about something semi-serious, consider the bathroom not to be necessarily the best place. If your partner's on the toilet, I'm guessing they're not going to want to talk about budget or the in-laws or something remotely interesting. It's only not important. So make sure that not only you've got enough of the right time, but the location's appropriate. Don't start a conversation as your partner's on your kid's bed putting them to sleep, right? Silly, but it works. Now, something that's also very important, and I talk about this with all my couples in therapy, is our ability to actively listen. It's one thing to be in the room and have our eyes opened and our ears sort of listening. It's another to be really present in the moment. So actively listen to your partner when they talk. Now, I tell my husband this all the time, and he still hasn't quite got it, but our brains are not wired to both talk and listen at the same time. We can only prioritize one. So if you're busy thinking about the next thing you're going to say or the sentence you're about to throw in, you're not actually listening. So when your partner's listening, there should be nothing in your mind but, what are they telling me? And then when they pause, your turn comes and you should be able to answer or clarify. Now, of course, it's really hard when both partners are a bit high-strung and having some difficulties regulating their emotions at that time. And we'll talk about this in another chapter. But consider active listening. How are you actively listening? Are you looking at your partner? Are you listening? Are you quiet as they speak? Are you using a body language that's respectful? How's your heart rate? So if your heart rate's going crazy, and we say about a heart rate over 20 beats per 15 seconds, that means you're really high strung and you're really not in a position to be listening proactively without being emotional. So a nice little exercise, measure your heart rate. You're having a conversation, you're feeling like, measure your heart rate. If it's faster than 25 beats per 15 seconds, take a break, because nobody's going to go anywhere with this conversation, right? So in therapy, we literally would measure our heart rates, and if it's over 20 beats per 15 seconds, then we'll take a 10-minute breather or 10 deep breaths, whatever works. So remember also that when we communicate with people, it's about sharing. So if I talk to my husband all the time about things that interest me, the odds are he's going to get bored with my conversation. So remember to share the topics. It should be about boring/important things, bills and emergencies and money and children's chores and whatnot. But it should also be about fun things that interest your partner. Ask them about their favorite Marvel movie and the latest work gossip or whatever else. Just make sure that you both take turns in what's interesting to each other. All right, a few truth and dare, just for the fun of it. So practice asking your partner about their day and make a point to not interrupt. Just ask questions. Let them talk. Practice asking relevant questions that would interest them. Get them talking. Do not jump in, and be mindful of your body language. And think about the difference. Are they more engaged? Do they feel like you're listening better? Use I questions or I statements rather than using you or the blaming type tone. A fun way to do this is to record yourself between you and your partner for 10-15 minutes. Record yourself, with their permission, of course. Record yourself and listen. Pay attention to your tone, your choice of words, the use of silences, and whether you're talking over them. And then make some notes of how you could improve. Don't make it threatening, just take your time. Finally, one last exercise. Maybe watch a video where both you and your partner feature. Maybe a home movie from yonks ago. Something when you first met. And observe your body language, your eye contact, your affectionate gestures, or even your interactions with other people while they're in the room. And consider and discuss with them what's changed. What do you notice? What do you like? What don't you like? And ask yourself whether it's changed over the years from when you first met to now. And perhaps now might be a good time to recommit to the hand holding and the kind words and the good morning messages, the things that make a big difference, the things that make you feel appreciated. These are important. So I might leave it for today. I hope this is helpful. These are just discussion starters. It's just about people recognizing that relationships are hard work, but they can be quite fun. And I hope you have some fun practicing these exercises. So remember to come and follow me on Facebook at Stephanie Azri Author. We have lots of fun, lots of games, and hop on my website, join the mailing list, and you'll get free chapters in the mail for you. All the best. Talk later. Bye.